Episode 56 by UK, London. ROSEP View, PM 2.5 is associated with development of dementia, in a UK study. Experts call for stricter air pollution targets to tackle dementia risk, The Guardian. The Guardian. Produced by the burning of fossil fuels, may also be a risk factor for dementia. Wood-burning air pollution in UK has doubled in a decade. Europe. EX. European Union. ROSEP View, the European Union deciding the future of biomass, wood, burning as renewable energy, receiving subsidies, involves these players: 1. The European Union Parliament, 2. Biomass, wood, burning industry lobbyists, 3. The European Academy's Science Advisory Council, EASAC, 4. Brussels-based Forest Protection Campaign Group FERN, and 5. Member States of the European Union. EU weighs up future of wood-burning as renewable energy. IndiaTimes.com. IndiaTimes.com. The EU officially counts wood and other biomass as carbon neutral, based on the premise that CO2 emitted through burning will be reabsorbed by more. Excerpts edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity. EU weighs up future of wood-burning as renewable energy. April 3, 2023. Biomass, which includes firewood, plants, and other organic materials, makes up 60% of the EU's renewable energy mix according to the European Commission. Because new trees can be planted after others have been chopped down, firewood gets the renewable seal of approval under EU law. The EU officially counts wood and other biomass as carbon neutral, based on the premise that CO2 emitted through burning will be reabsorbed by more trees in the future. The European Union's race to rid itself of dependence on Russian fossil fuels is well underway. The International Energy Agency says widespread bids to beef up energy security turbocharged growth of green power in 2022, and EU parliamentarians hope to ramp up renewables targets to reach 45% of bloc-wide energy consumption by 2030. The word renewable often conjures up images of wind farms or solar panels, less so scenes of burning trees. But biomass, which includes firewood, plants, and other organic materials, makes up 60% of the EU's renewable energy mix according to the European Commission. As the bloc now reviews its landmark renewable power legislation, a political battle over firewood's future is playing out in Brussels. EU accused of incentivizing environmental harm. Climate impact of wood-burning under debate. EU institutional showdown over future of firewood subsidies. European Commission promises tighter forest sustainability rules. EU accused of incentivizing environmental harm. A representative of Brussels-based Forest Protection Campaign Group FERN argues the subsidy setup is insane and its criteria are not strict. Climate impact of wood-burning under debate. The European Academy's Science Advisory Council, EASAC, says scientific study suggests the trend to replace coal with wood pellets as a means of generating electricity actually increases atmospheric levels of carbon dioxide for substantial periods of time. A 2019 ESAC report says the time it takes for carbon emissions associated with woodburning to be evened out can range from years to decades or even centuries, depending on conditions. EU institutional showdown over future of firewood subsidies. The European Parliament wants to limit subsidies for burning wood taken directly from forests, and instead restrict state support to secondary wood products like sawdust. Lawmakers also want to phase down the amount of wood that counts toward EU renewable energy targets. Niels Torvalds, one of the lawmakers working on the legislation, said the proposal is the Parliament's way of trying to limit the unsustainable and inefficient use of wood. EU member states, meanwhile, prefer a looser definition of which type of wood can be subsidized. Diplomats said there's a feeling that with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with the energy crisis, member states do think that bioenergy is an important renewable source of energy. It has an important contribution to the energy system and to reaching the climate goals. Negotiations on the details of the legislation continue this month. European Commission promises tighter forest sustainability rules. The European Commission has also put forward plans to tighten laws on which firewood qualifies for subsidies. A spokesperson said that proposals include barring wood sourced from ancient forests and only greenlighting state support for lumber from highly biodiverse forests. Under the plans, all wood-burning power plants will also have to meet certain greenhouse gas-saving thresholds. But the track record on existing rules leaves room for concern. National authorities are supposed to transpose EU standards into domestic legislation, but the European Commission spokesperson said that the body launched legal action against all 27 member states in 2021 for failing to complete this process or failing to notify Brussels of completion. Ukraine. Rozhep, Russia's fourth offensive against Ukraine, was the attempt to blackmail European democracies into dropping their support for Ukraine by cutting off their supplies of natural gas. The author states that much EU success in face of Russian blackmail reflects the fact that Europe already gets a large share of its energy from renewables. In Rozhep's view, unfortunately, presently, 60% of EU renewable energy comes from burning biomass, wood. Putin's energy offensive has failed. April 6, 2023. Excerpts cited by Rozhep for brevity and clarity. Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine on February 24, 2022. Since then, Russia has launched 4 great offensives. 3 were military, the 4th was economic. And while you don't hear much about that last offensive, its failure offers some very important lessons. Russia's most important defeat has come not on the battlefield but on the economic front. Russia attempted to blackmail European democracies into dropping their support for Ukraine by cutting off their supplies of natural gas. Russia is a major oil producer, and both Russia and Ukraine were major agricultural exporters before the war. Natural gas seemed like an especially serious pressure point. Europe has weathered the loss of Russian supplies remarkably well. Euro area unemployment hasn't gone up at all, inflation did surge, but European governments have managed, through a combination of price controls and financial aid, to limit, but not eliminate, the amount of personal hardship created by high gas prices. A turn came to other sources of gas, including liquefied natural gas shipped from the United States, and there were conservation efforts that have reduced demand. There was a temporary return to coal-fired electricity generation, and much of it reflects the fact that Europe already gets a large share of its energy from renewables. And yes, it was an unusually warm winter, which also helped. But as a report from the European Council on Foreign Relations states that Moscow failed in its effort to blackmail EU member states through withholding gas. Europe has stepped up its military aid to Ukraine, notably by sending main battle tanks that may help the coming Ukrainian counteroffensive. Fossil fuel lobbyists have insisted that any attempt to reduce greenhouse gas emissions would be disastrous for jobs and economic growth. But Europe made an energy transition under the worst possible circumstances, sudden, unexpected, and drastic, and handled it pretty well. A gradual, planned green energy transition will be far easier than pessimists imagine.